There isn't a whole podcast dedicated to failure just to tell you, well, it won't happen in your case if you listen to this podcast, or it won't happen in this case if you read this book. No, it's impossible to avoid failure. You have to go through failure in order to be great. Welcome to the Spinoso Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Spinoso, and my mission is to share what I've learned in my journey from scaling medical businesses to building multi-million-dollar companies to help level up your life and business. That was a pretty shitty intro. Vaughn keeps like writing different intros to these, and they're just absolutely abysmal. God, I don't know why he changes them. We had it and we're good. Okay, so guys, you know what the fuck the show's about. If you don't, listen to the other 150 intros. Only Vaughn wrote like 3 of them that were different. So let's get into this. What are we gonna talk about today?
Well, today we're going to talk about failure and that it's not just something that you have
Oh,
to
I'm a pro at that.
Oh, good. Well, we're going to
Go.
find out how it's worked out
Off.
for you because you've gotten pretty far. So it's worked out in some way. Um, and that sometimes that is a part of the process, as you just said, and that overcoming it is something that surprisingly creates some good results on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna dive into that, and then the truth is it's really failure's not an end, as we all know, but usually a stepping stone to the next level, so how we use that to better ourselves, that's what we're gonna figure out today.
Let's do it. I have failed so much in business, and I think that's the good thing about growing up as an athlete in my house is that, failure, although not tolerated to a degree, at least in my house, um, it was not looked at for very long. It was like, "Okay, you failed, move on, do the next thing," or, "You failed, okay, get better." So that the next time you could go out there and absolutely crush it, on the athletic field. Same thing with schooling. Like my job as a child, and my dad used to always say this, my mom used to always say this, my job was school. I didn't have a real job. So my job was school. I had to show up, get good grades, pay attention. And if I didn't do my job, there would be punishments for not doing my job. Uh, Such as being locked in a cage from the basement for 3 days without food. No, but no, there was issues, I couldn't play, I couldn't, he wouldn't take me to, like, practice if I, like, fucked around or if I was joked. There was issues with, not playing on weekends because I played competitive soccer. There was all those punishments for actually not doing your job, which is the same in the real fucking world where kids grow up to be adults, and then you have punishments in your real job if you don't do your job. I mean, most of the time it's just being fired.
Right.
People are worried about getting written up, but if you don't continue to do your job, then you just get replaced. You just get fired. And that's how the world works. It's not fair, but guess what? Like, failure is a part of it, but learning that failure and then moving forward, I think that's where the growth happens.
Well, and that's one of the things I was gonna ask you really is, like, how in business are you talking about failure in the sense of, like, school and being younger and, like, prior to entrepreneurism, but, like, how has failure in the business sense helped set you up for where you are today?
Oh man. So business in general is like the stupid tax, essentially. You are consistently paying the dumb tax or the stupid tax, and that is paying for stuff or trying out different ways of growing your business or marketing or services or etc. that you're consistently failing at, and that's okay. That's like just part of it. But when you're failing, obviously, you're not trying to do that again. So you try it once, you fail at it, and you're like, well, that definitely is not something I should be doing. Let's pivot and try something else. So that's the dumb tax. Every time you fuck up, every time you have a bad marketing campaign, things like that, you're taking those lessons and you're learning from them and you're continuing to adapt and you're continuing to grow. And core values, growth is one of our core values of Genesis, and that's personal growth and professional growth. So obviously professional growth just means making more money, having more responsibility, etc. But personal growth is, hey, what are you doing to make yourself better? What are you doing to improve your processes, procedures, things like that, not only in business but at home. And for me, that is consistently creating adaptability. Like Brent and I are consistently, again, innovating, changing things, figuring things out, new rules, new KPIs to see what works and what clicks. And every step's going to be another step towards that. So every tool that we use, everything that we add to our services is just it's another tool to move us forward, make us smarter, make us stronger, make us more prepared for everything. And every time at the beginning, I tell people when you're doing business, you are going to consistently have little failures. And as long as every single one of those failures you learn from and then you pivot and you move forward again, you're never gonna lose. At some point, you're going to win. You're gonna continue to win. And that's part of the endurance thing, is that you'll lose over and over and over again. But if you pivot, if you learn from those mistakes and you move forward, you'll win. The worst thing that you can do is not learn from those mistakes and not pivot. You do something, you fuck up, you fail, and then you're just like, well, let's try that again. Or let's try that again. And let's try that again. And then they're failing over and over. And they're like, well, I don't know what's happening. Like, well, what the fuck are you doing? I am doing this one thing. Okay. Have you ever tried anything different? No. Well, that's probably why. You're not learning at all from yourself failing.
Yeah, and mistakes, they're the ultimate teacher, right? Like, that's where what's revealed to you is what needs to get changed and where those moments of pivot come into play. And so that's when you refine your strategy and go, okay, let me not do that again. So,
Yeah.
what do I need to learn to do different going forward?
Right.
Eh, and then
Exactly.
that's really the dumb tax.
Yeah.
That's tax on tax if you don't take those moments and go, let me not do that again.
Exactly. I've
Yeah.
told this story before where when we started Genesis, it was started as a stem cell company called CellSpark, and we trusted this marketing company to do our marketing for us. It was our third partner, and we're like, okay, yeah, he's got a marketing company, he knows what he's doing. And so they ended up spending like 40 or $50,000 in the course of 45 days and had zero conversions. So think $50,000 going out the door is $0 coming in,
Wow.
and we ended up going negative in the bank accounts and overdrafting and all this stuff. And that was the first time I learned immediately right away, failing at marketing where, hey, you should probably have an ad spend that you tell these people to spend. There's like a maximum that you need to spend. There's a cost per lead that you should try and target when you're trying to get these leads in the door. There's a certain amount of conversion, calling out or messaging these people that you need to be doing to get them to come into your company. So there was all those failures. It was like one failure, but we learned a ton of lessons from that one failure, and that's what you should be doing, really.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like too, it builds resilience because these lessons that you learned early on end up carrying through, but it makes you tougher the next time something doesn't work out. You go like, you don't look at it as like, oh, this failure is going to be the end of me. You look at that and you go, okay, what can I learn from this? And it makes you tougher. I feel like when you first start a business, the first couple failures are the hardest because
Mhm.
it's like you have so much riding on it, you know? They're like all of your money is in it or your whole, passion for what you're creating and the vision of like it being amazing. And then if it doesn't work out, it's like, it hurts.
Yeah.
But over time, it builds resilience because it's like you don't look at the failures as like, "Oh, this is the end." It's like, "Okay, this is a stepping stone." And now you're not gonna make those same mistakes in marketing and, maybe other mistakes, but the mistakes I think also get smaller um, in their impact,
Mhm.
like, because it's like, "All right, I know not to do that, so I might shift a little bit and do something different, but that's not gonna cost me as much
Right.
because I it cost me a lot at the beginning, so it's not gonna cost me that much the next time I make a mistake.
No, you're absolutely right about that, is that the mistakes get smaller and smaller. So at the beginning, Brent and I were making 50% of our decisions maybe ended up in mistakes, or 40% ended up in mistakes. But as we go, it's like 10%, 15%, maybe 20% that are little happy accidents, we'll call them. But it gets less and less and less because you get more educated in the process. You get more educated about what you're doing. And really what happens is that as you stay in a field long enough and you are in it, your endurance is, knocked up, your knuckles are dragged, you get kicked in the balls or punched in the titty over and over and over. What happens is that you start to learn and unlock knowledge and things that you would never have if you had jump ship. So there's a lot of, providers and medical clinics that will start a business and then they'll add this service and then that add this service, or they'll pivot away from a service, or they'll go from direct primary care to med spa stuff to something else. And the problem with that is that you never get really, really good at what you're doing. So you don't see all the possibilities when it comes to what are the verticals that could be added to this business? What are the relationships that I've had or that I can have in order to grow my business, etc. So there's a time where that failure, it teaches you what doesn't work, and over time it gets smaller and smaller. But the longer you stay in something and the more failure you have, the less and less and less you have to go looking for answers, because the answers start to repeat themselves. History starts to repeat itself in the business, just at different levels. So that's a huge part where when we talk about failure, like, failure builds that grit. It builds that determination, which is, again, one of our core values, determination, where you just consistently are okay with getting knocked down, but standing back up and doing it over and over again. And that grit is something you have to develop in order to build a business. There's no way at all that you can't have determination, that you can't have grit and build a decent business. You just can't.
Well, yeah, because the failures are gonna knock you down. And I think some people get discouraged in those moments and then lose the passion for what they're trying to do. And that, you know, it's a mental toughness that you're trying to build,
Yeah.
through the process.
Yeah. Passion is bullshit. Fuck passion. All you guys who are creating a business or building a business because it's your passion, let me just tell you right now, it's a fucking terrible idea, because you'll never be able to push past like all the crap. Just because it's your passion and you love to do it, guess what? Whatever you're doing, if you're building a business, you're gonna fucking hate it at some point.
Uh,
You're gonna hate it and it's gonna suck and it's gonna go up and down and up and down, but you're definitely gonna fucking hate it. And so if it's your passion, just realize, like, your passion is gonna get absolutely destroyed. So you should have something else besides just, I'm passionate about this. This is what happens when you see like the gym owners who's like the steroid head who wants to buy, who works out all the time and then like, it's like, I'm gonna run a gym. It's like, okay, cool. What are you gonna do? Like, oh, I just get the free workout for free, whatever I want. All right. Like, do you realize it's 50K in equipment, and then you gotta have trainers, and then you gotta build a you actually gotta have, yeah, a lease, and that's a big box lease. So it's a 5-10 year lease that you're signing and all this stuff. And the that's because you're passionate about something is definitely not a reason to go into it as an entrepreneur, because you're absolutely right. When you have failure, passion is it's okay. You're just gonna realize that your passion, you're gonna have to start to hate at some point. Like, I don't like being a doctor. I fucking hate it. I do like building businesses, but still, it's really great and it's a lot of fun. And I would say that's, passion-esque at this point, but sometimes I hate it. Probably half the days I hate it
yeah.
because it's horrible. It's rough. Being an entrepreneur and being on your own, it is terrible. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat it for you guys listening. You know, Entrepreneurship, that failure, it's going to happen, guys. There isn't a whole podcast dedicated to failure just to tell you, well, it won't happen in your case if you listen to this podcast, or it won't happen in this case if you read this book. No, it's impossible to avoid failure. You have to go through failure in order to be great. Ask any fucking millionaire, listen to any autobiography or biography of any person who's done anything worth shit, and they will tell you that they've had a ridiculous amount of failure and a ridiculous amount of resilience that happened after that failure.
So what do you think about when we're talking about it's not about passion, but, like, let's say somebody wants to create something, they get knocked down. How do you bring yourself, like, in your case, how what do you do? What do you tell yourself to get back up and keep going?
I think there's a ridiculous amount of ego that has to come there, that you just believe that you can do it no matter what. Some people are driven by, what's your why? So Simon Sinek wrote a great book about your why, or finding your why. And again, some people dig into, well, I want this for my children, or I want this for my family, you know. And as you grow in business, as I've grown in business, I like to really feed into our staff. I like them to see them grow. I like them to see them change their stripes. And Brent and I talk about it all the time, like changing family trees. And when it comes to having people level up and make more money and change what they're doing and improve upon themselves, that, again, strokes our ego. It just is. You have to have that, and I think it's important to have a little bit of ego, because you're not gonna win in a competition if you don't think you could fucking stomp the competition.
Yeah.
You just won't. You have to have that mindset. You know, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Luka Doncic, none of those guys go onto the basketball court or went onto the basketball court thinking, like, this is my passion, we're just gonna make friends and have fun. No, they stepped onto the court to absolutely fucking dominate everybody that they play against and played against, period. And they've been quoted doing, saying that and living that over and over a million times. And that being said, it's the same in business. Yeah, you can have friends and be friendly, but at the same time, you are in it to win. You have to win. If you don't win, you don't make any money in business, period. You have to have wins. And if you don't win at a bigger scale or a larger wins or against bigger companies, then again, you're not going to grow. You're not going to scale. And that's the mindset you have to have, where that you might be passionate about that, but you have to go out there to win. Business is a sport. You have to go out there and you have to build something where put a team together where you're going to win. And if your team isn't succeeding, or there's processes and procedures that need to be fixed, there's something going on that you're not winning. So what is it? Troubleshoot what you're not winning. If your team's out there, your athletic team is out on the field and they're not winning, maybe it's a management issue. Maybe it's a coaching issue. Maybe it's the people you put on the field not working well together. Maybe it's, in basketball, if there's four good guys and one shitty guy on the court, I mean, that's a big deficit. There's only five people out there. It's 20% of your team that sucks on the court. That's not good.
Yeah.
So you can't hide in bigger sports. But at the same time, you have to think of your business that way. Your team is professional athletes. You need to put the best team on the field. There is no trophies here for fucking participation. We're not rotating people through. If you cannot execute, you cannot succeed. And if you go out there and you cannot execute and you fail, okay, fine. Guess what? In the off season, you better be working out. You better be doing two-a-days. You better be throwing up. You better be doing everything you can to get your spot back, period. Just like an athlete would, it's the same in the clinic. It's the same in business. Are you learning outside of business? Are you trying to contribute to the team no matter what? And if you're not, then you don't belong there.
Yeah. That's so good. And then, for the teams that you have, you're talking about from, like, high level failure, but, like, how do you cultivate that throughout the team and the organization that, like, they're also gonna experience some level of failures, but that they need to stay focused and get back up and keep moving and learn from those things. And obviously that goes back to our core values, but it's like, of growth, personal growth and stuff. But how do you cultivate that type of resilience within the team?
I think you just don't consistently punish them for making mistakes. If you're going to empower them to make decisions, then you should empower them to make mistakes. And at the beginning, you can have them discuss all their decision making with you. But before that, you're training them. You have to train them up. You have to train them in almost everything that you do. And you might miss some things. That's okay. They're only going to be about 80% as good as you at the beginning, but over time, they're going to be way better than you. Just realize that. So when they come in front of you and they have a failure, don't just scream and yell at them for it. Say, okay, why did this happen? Or why did you think, you had to do it this way? Figure out their point of view, discuss it, improve upon it, and then move forward again. So if you're consistently like, hey, you piece of shit, why the fuck did you do it this way? Every time they make a mistake, guess what? You're going to burn through staff because the next person is probably going to make that same mistake
Yeah.
or a mistake like it. And so your staff will make mistakes. It's okay. Your team will make mistakes. It's okay. You just have to learn to be like, okay, these are the steps we put in place to do this now, or improve your systems, improve your training. It's always up, guys. You always have to look up the field and say, hey, did I do something to make them make decision? And sometimes it's training, sometimes it's the way you describe something, and then sometimes it's just the teammate that just did something fucking stupid. And you're like, that's okay. Let's not do that again, like ever. With
You
any
shouldn't
reason.
do it in
It's
business or life.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
don't
just
do that
just
ever again.
that, just don't fucking do again. Um, and you cultivate that. You say it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to innovate. It's okay to have personal professional growth. Those are all things that you have to live in your core values. And as long as in our business, as long as their integrity isn't compromised, for the most part, they're gonna stick around and we're gonna train them and we're gonna be like, okay, here we go. Let's fix this, let's do this. And we'll keep people longer than usually we should because of that, because we're trying to train and improve upon them and things like that. But there is a point where sometimes, you have to fire that loyalty and hire for efficiency because they just can't get it. Failure should be a learning experience, but for some people, failure is just like a fun thing to do every day. And so it's just like that person, you just don't
They just like this.
you just don't belong here. Yeah, you like failure, so you don't belong here. Although we encourage failure, you seem to like it. So let's put you somewhere else or get you out of here. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I think it's a matter of recognizing that failure exposes your weakness in a way that it's helpful. Like the SWOT analysis, like knowing your strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Like knowing that is all very important in being able to make the right steps forward. And the weakness part, while people might be like, I don't have any weaknesses. Like
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is we all have that. And so recognizing that when failure comes, it exposes the weakness. So then we know, hey, how do we turn this into a strength? And it allows you to ask the questions like, what do I need to do? And like, what areas do I need to work on to improve in this? Because it doesn't always have to be a weakness. Like, there have been many times in my life I've taken things that would be considered a weakness and worked on them to the point now that they're a strength.
Mhm.
Like, I hated my my poor ex-husband. If
Mhm.
he ever listens to this, shout out to you for dealing with my crazy ass for so long.
Mhm.
So, I hated budgeting. I
Oh,
hated it.
okay.
And he would always ask me to sit down
Just spend
and go over the
just
budget.
spend like
I actually am not a spender. I'm not like a natural spender. I'm a
yeah.
natural saver. But like spreadsheets and looking at numbers and like, I just tell me how much I have, and I'll buy groceries for that,
Mhm. Mhm.
but I don't need to know everything. And so, oh, yeah, it was like pulling teeth and now I love it. So it's like I've had to really work at like what is it about it I don't like or, is it the attention, the focus that I need to actually like learn it? And then spreadsheets have become like one of my new favorite things, and I have spreadsheets for everything now, and
Mhm.
now my budget is like 3 months out, so, like, if I make one change to it, I know what's gonna happen 3 months from now. But that was a weakness of mine. It was not something I enjoyed or spent time on,
Mhm.
and now I love it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, that's actually really funny. It's like, "Yeah, yeah, I didn't budget because just fuck it. Full send. Just gonna spend whatever the fuck I want." So, actually, why don't you dive a little deeper on the SWOT analysis? Because that's really important. I mean, and weaknesses and failure is a part of that. So what is that SWOT analysis you were talking about, and how can people use that? We're gonna go off a tangent here really quick, but
Yeah.
this is important.
I think you can use it a couple ways. I mean, it's designed for business, and so it's an assessment of your strengths, your weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. Now, that can also be done in comparison to another company. So, like your competition, let's say, like what are your strengths? What are their strengths? And sometimes that's where like threats come in. Like, could could this competition truly be competition if like that would be a threat if they take over this segment of the market and we're not keeping ourselves moving forward and growing like how maybe the industry demands. Um, so it's a really good look at it's like a reference point, like, where are you in business? But again, you can use this in life. Like, what are your strengths in business? Like,
Mm,
where do you do really, really well? And understanding those things because those are things that you can leverage and also like do more vertical integration around wherever your strengths are. And then weaknesses show like where do you need to get better? Where do you need to spend time to actually grow either in your business or develop new plans or hire like somebody that is really great at that so that it takes that off the plate and then you have somebody that's like really focused in that area. So if you know you're not good at something, don't pretend and don't think like you have to be great at it. You can have a team that's really good at it, and then they're doing it. And then opportunities, which is something we like to call in Genesis, like issues when we have our issues conversations,
mhm,
like what are things in the business that are current issues? We call those opportunities. So where are opportunities to pivot, make changes, do something a little bit different, something that's not working that we're trying to optimize. So, like, what opportunities are on the table or opportunities to vertically integrate, like, when you guys bought the pharmacies.
mhm,
So, like, that was an opportunity that helped not only like obviously like your personal portfolio, but also Genesis as a whole, because now we can get better pricing. So like that's an incredible opportunity. And then threats are things that could threaten your business, like for example, the 503A versus 503B pharmacies. Like if your business is built on one of those and then that goes away, what happens?
mhm.
So, like, being very clear about what immediate threats should we be aware of and paying attention to so we know to stay ahead of it. Um, and I think that 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 understanding in business and personal life is super important because it just helps you have a good reference point for where you're at.
Mhm.
Like, it's not like something I hear you say is like operate based on facts, not feelings.
Right.
And that helps you operate on facts. So when it comes to personal development, I'm a big fan of personal development, been in it for 15 plus years. Like as an entrepreneur, it's easy to get stuck working in the business, like where you're just like putting out fires all day or or just like day-to-day work in the business, because at the beginning, a lot of times you don't have enough people on your team, and so you're doing 9,000 jobs,
Mhm.
but it's super important to take the time out to plan and get clear. Like, and the SWOT analysis is something that allows you to get clear about where you're at and what you need to be paying attention to. So taking time to do that stuff is going to be a factor in whether or not you succeed. Whether it's that one or if there's other things like that that are also very good. But spending the time that, to me is like the personal growth, business planning side that is also also foundational in building something that you can really grow and scale.
Yeah. No, that's extremely important. And guys, if you haven't yet, you should probably do a SWOT analysis at some point on your business. Look at what's going on. You can do it in your personal life as well. But like we talked about before, you're right. The failure exposes weaknesses. If you have an issue, in something, if you have an issue with a step or a process or a procedure, hey, your standard operating procedures must be weak in a certain area. If you have an issue with staff always messing up a certain thing, or you think they have a entitlement to themselves or anything that is wrong in your business, it means there's a weakness there. It means there's something that needs to be fixed or improved upon there. Now, if only one employee out of 10 employees seem to have a problem with a certain situation, well, it's probably the employee instead of the weakness of the system. But then obviously there's a weakness of the employee. So those failures, whatever you're looking at, when you fail, look at it as an opportunity to improve upon that weakness. There's something there that caused that problem to happen, whether it's in your procedures, whether it's in the way you treat clients, whether it's in the way your reviews are only 2-star reviews. All those things show weaknesses in your business that you could improve upon 100%. And at the same time, when you do have those failures, you're forced to improve upon them. You have to. If you don't improve upon them, again, you become irrelevant and your business fucking goes away. So you need to have that failure inspire yourself to be creative, to innovate, to come up with solutions. And many times in business, in the most part, there's nothing new about most businesses out there. N Nothing new about most businesses, nothing innovative, nothing really, really different, I would say, about most businesses. So that being said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel a lot of times when you come up with a problem. You just have to look at, hey, who's had this problem before? What are other businesses? What are other people in my position have gone what have they gone against before? What are their issues that have had in the past? What are their failures? And then you learn from their failures. That's why you listen to podcasts and learn. That's why you read books and learn. That's why you talk to mentors and managers and learn what are the pitfalls and the failures that they had, because you'll learn way more from failures than you do from successes. Because successes, you're like, okay, I know how to do this well, but then that success is not going to last. You can't do the same thing for 20 years straight, the same exact thing for 20 years straight in our field, in the medical field, and expect it to consistently be at the top. You can't. Medicine is always moving. It's always changing. It's not like, for the most part, the railroads where you could build a railroad in 50 years, 100 years later, it's just the same railroad. But business is different when it comes to that, and medical business is even more important with that, is that you have to have creativity, you have to have innovation. The best ideas come from the moments when you don't have any other option. And you're zero options mentality, and you have to think outside the box or lose.
Yeah, it's like forcing you to find a solution or like a new way.
Right.
Yeah. No,
Exactly.
forced innovation.
Exactly.
But sometimes I feel like we don't have to suffer. We don't have to wait until it gets to that point. If you take the time to actually look at like what I was just describing with the SWOT analysis, if that's like something you do on a regular basis and you're reviewing, you don't necessarily have to wait until you fail to make a change. And I think people do wait until they fail to make a change, but you don't have to. And that's why innovation is one of our core values. I mean, we try to get out in front of it, innovate before there's an issue, because that's helpful along the process. Um, but it also it's just like you gotta be willing to think a little bit differently in order to do that. Where people, it's like that analogy you've given many times before, like cutting the ends off of the ham before you cook it, just because that's how we've always done it.
Mm,
And it's like, "Nah," like, you don't have to wait until there's failure because you're doing the same thing the same way for so long until it's no longer relevant. Like, you can stay in front of it, but it's like seeing it from a fresh perspective and having that creativity and, like, being willing to look at things differently.
Look, guys, no, if you're absolutely look, if you're failing because of your poor habits, take it as an opportunity to replace those habits. You you're doing something wrong. If you're failing, something is wrong, period. Like, you have to figure out what it is. You have to pivot. You have to change things. And sometimes it's changing 2, 3, 4, 5 things before you turn that failure or consistent failures into success. I mean, when it comes to marketing, we'll hire a marketing team and they are very good at one thing, but they fail at all the others. And you try and pivot on those things and they're still not good at it. It's like, you know what? Just let them market this and we'll find another marketing company that's good at this service. So don't feel like you have to be stuck with one marketing company or one way of solving a problem. Always think of other ways to solve the problem because in the end, you just want to get to the results. How you solve the problem for the most part isn't really that big of a deal. You could solve it 1,000 different ways. It's okay. The biggest issue is making sure that you're getting to your end result that you want. So no matter how you get there, within, you know, integrity, it doesn't matter at all how you get there. So think about it that way because when you are failing and you need to improve your habits, you need to improve your ways, that's when you start to look at your circle. That's when you start to look at the people around you and you start to learn from them and you start to really say, "Hey, what do I need to get to the next level?" And any entrepreneur needs to have a little bit of humility in realizing, "Hey, we don't fucking know everything out there. We know a whole hell of a lot and we'll know more and more and more as we grow, but looking at or looking to mentors to get us to that next level, asking those questions, reaching out and getting those questions answered in, let's say, a group. That's why we have charismatics. That's why we built that medical mastermind group so that people can come in there and they can get their questions answered from other people who have built highly successful businesses. And there's a bunch of phenomenal business owners in there. It's incredible. And they've gone through it all. They've gone through a whole bunch of different things. They've been in business 10, 15, 20 years plus in all different sorts of models. So they can navigate all those failures. And that's why we created that community. That's why we created that connection with other people so that they can improve upon their services. You could improve upon your services and the community just gets better together.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, who you surround yourself with makes a big difference. And like, you don't want to surround yourself with people who only fail, like what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
They make
That doesn't help you at
a
all.
lifestyle of failing, is like finding somebody that's successful in what you wanna be successful at, and then, like, surrounding yourself with those people, and I think that's part of what helps drive better habits, because like, you're gonna start to be a reflection of the people around you, so as you're building habits to have a better lifestyle or create a better business, um of course, like, the failures are a part of it, and that's what we're talking about here, but it's like failure helps you see where you need to have better habits, like, you know, when I didn't like doing a budget and realized, I don't know where all my money is going, well, then I knew I needed to have a better habit, and this was 10 years ago. I'm like, "Okay, I gotta figure this out if I wanna really start to create some sort of, wealth for myself." So, it's like, where do I need to have a better habit? Like, understanding where every dollar is going is a good habit, and that helps me get to the results that I wanna have. So, failure sometimes is that management in in getting to the results that you want because it creates better habits.
Yep. No, 100%. When you fail, you're not on an island alone. There are other people that have had that problem. There's other people that have traversed that and they have good habits and they could teach you those habits. So, crowdsource for those results, crowdsource for the answers that you're looking for. And you're right. Improve upon yourself. That's it. That's what it comes down to.
What about for you? Is there, like, something that you feel like has become a habit now that's been super helpful in business?
Man, that is a loaded question because there's kind of so much that has become a habit. Failure has become a habit. That's a good one. Um,
Fitting for the title of this conversation.
right, exactly. No, I think there's things that you just do all day long that you realize that that's just what you have to do as you grow in business. I would say, habits are always looking for the problems, but that's as a CEO when you're running a company, you're a funnel for the problems, so you're always looking for the problems rather than looking for all the good, which is difficult because it kind of gets you jaded a lot.
Mm,
But at the same time, that is your um, job. Your job isn't to look at all the positive things that are running well and growing and being like, man, I did that. No, it's like your team did that, but then where are all the problems that is going on in your business that you need to fix? That's the habits that I now look for every day is those habits of, hey, uh, we got to look at all the problems, we got to fix all the problems, and we got to do it in a stepwise fashion. I think another thing when it comes to that is there's a book, Death by Meeting, where as you're in business, to say, don't have all these meetings because all these meetings will slow you down, et cetera. And that's true to a degree. But when you're leading the business and working on the business rather than in the business, your day is only meetings.
yeah.
That's it. That's all you're doing. Meetings with vendors, meetings with your business partners, meetings with your board, meetings, meetings, meetings. That's all you do all day long. Once you have those meetings, then you're implementing or uh, transitioning or telling your leaders in your clinics, for example, or your region, or your regional directors or other executives in your team, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. So it's meetings and then directions, meetings and then directions, and you're getting that feedback. You're listening to, hey, how did we fail with this? How did we fail with this to improve upon that process over and over and over. So I think that's a habit that I've grown to have as I've grown in business is that you're looking for the failures, you're implementing the failures, and then you're taking those failures and making them into successes. One of the biggest parts about failure is that if you're doing it right and if you actually pay attention, then it provides a little bit of empathy as you grow. So it I used to be a very, very hard like owner. I'm still a very hard owner, a little hard ass boss. And sometimes it was like if somebody fucked up, it would be like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, what's wrong with you? Are you stupid?" All sorts of things that just burn people to the ground that obviously aren't the best. And as I've gone through time and grown business and you fuck up yourself over and over and over, then you realize and you learn from other people who have built great businesses that not everybody just comes to work in the morning and says, "You know what? I'm gonna fuck this place up. This is just my goal today is just to fuck like my job up." I totally am for that. And that's just not true, especially with our hiring process and how long it takes and vetting and everything. People don't come to really screw up your business. Just realize that. So having that empathy of, okay, they made a mistake or we had a failure, you're realizing that there's other people that have struggles as well. There are other people that'll go through it. That's why there's a phrase, hire slow, fire fast, but then there's another phrase actually, and I forget exactly which CEO said this, but it's a recent interview that said, hire fast and fire, or hire slow and fire slow. And what he says is that if somebody messes up, don't just fire them for it right away. Obviously, integrity things aside. But if somebody messes up, don't fire them right away because they made a mistake and you need to improve upon their mistake. You need to teach them about their mistake. And if you just fire them and you're consistently firing people for making mistakes, then you're never going to get anybody that stays around for a long period of time because you're never forgiving their mistakes. So the concept of firing slow is ensuring that your processes are in place right, your training are in place right. All the failures that you could or your team member could be traversing or getting into, those things are all fixed in the process of retraining this person. So they've been retrained multiple times and they either get it or at that point they don't get it, but you give them time to do it. Now there's the opposite of that, where if there's a person where you give them time and then you give them more time and then you're a year and a half into their employment and they're still doing the same things, at that point you just need to get rid of them, go somewhere else. But I thought that was a great concept, the hire slow, fire slow, concept because if you were to fire fast and everything that they do, you're either done, you're out of here, fucking next person, the next person is going to do the same thing or similar to it, or they're going to take it one step further and then fail. So realize that that's going to happen and you're going to have failures in your business. You're going to have failures in your team and being empathetic to it because you've gone through it. You've had those failures as well.
Yeah. I think those statements, they're like catchy Instagram worthy statements, like hire slow, fire fast. Something like people can like grab onto and repeat over and over, but those things are not always principles to live by. I'm always like questioning, like, is that really a good idea? Like when I hear those like cliche kind of trendy terms like repeated over and over on social media, I'm like,
Right.
is that really the best way to do it? Um, because yeah, I mean, if we all got fired or let go or discounted when we failed, we would none of us would be anywhere because we've all been down that path. Um, so yeah, and it's like it gives you a chance if people in your organization are making mistakes, gives you a chance to up your leadership skills. Like, am I not communicating effectively? Or like you said, do we have the proper procedures in place for onboarding and making sure they have the tools that they need? And
Mhm.
so it does give you a chance to up your leadership skills because you're a leader for a reason. And these people that you're hiring, unless they're being hired for a leadership reason or a leadership role, there's going to be a level of training necessary. And anybody who's new in any business has a process that they have to go through to come up
Mhm.
to speed. And so really understanding what people are going through is what I hear you saying.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And, the next step of that is you understand what people are going through, you understand where your team's going, and then it helps you refocus on the direction that you're going in. Like, what are the team members that I have on the bus, and where's the bus driving? Book Good to Great talks about teams and another book called All In both talks about teams and going all in on your staff. And they both kind of say the same thing where it comes to your team, where you get the right team on the bus and then you decide where the bus is going to drive. You don't just drive the bus and throw people on the bus. In the private equity world, they like to say we don't like to, build the plane as we're flying it. Same kind of phrase where, when you fail, you have to ask yourself, like, am I still really committed to this? Again, we talked about the passion thing. It's like, am I committed to this goal 100%? Not that I have passion around it because passion goes out the window as soon as you get punched in the fucking throat. All that passion goes out the window, and it's like, okay, do I have the grit to stand back up after getting knocked that heavily and move forward? Do I have what it takes to move forward and everything like that? So it really helps you focus on your goals. And Elon Musk says something great in that, you know, most efficiencies are created in a business around processes that shouldn't actually even be there. So looking at that from your failure, if you have a failure in your business, hey, this process even be here? Like, do we need have a reason? Like going back to the cutting the ham off of both sides of the or cutting the ends off both sides of the ham. Do we actually need this step? Is this something that's vital? Is this something that's important? Or are we making something efficient that we actually shouldn't even be focusing on
Mm.
in the company? Are there other things we can make better or more efficient or fail at and improve upon that is taking our that is way more important than what we're trying to do right now, and we're just doing this because it's a vanity thing, or if we did get it done, it's only gonna increase the, value of our company by 2%, which this other thing over here can increase the value of the company by 10% or the leads by 10%. So, making sure that whatever you're failing at, you are looking at the ultimate goal and saying, "Is this worth really digging deep and having the grit and the determination and the time and the money and the effort to figure it out? Or do I need to pivot and we should focus on something else that's going to move the needle further?"
Yeah, it's so good. Knowing where to focus, I think, is a skill in life and business that's super important and also sometimes the most challenging, especially when there's so much going on in business. Like, where do you spend your time and energy? And I think failure is a good starting point because it's at least giving you some direction of like, hey, there needs to be some focus here so that you don't make those same mistakes again and you get to the goal faster or with a little less struggle, maybe. Um, but then that leads me to the question, like, how do you feel like failure has helped you redefine your goals along the way?
I think when really we first got into Genesis, when I first got into building a wanting to build a business, we moved out of our Palm Springs home, as I've talked about before, and rented that front foyer, and I felt like a failure there. Definitely felt like a failure. I mean, I'm a 31 or 32-year-old doctor that moved his wife out or girlfriend and fiance, girlfriend or fiance, whatever. I think it happened in between that time. Fiance at the time into, a rented um foyer, and that's what we lived in. Like, I was a doctor, then we lived in a freaking foyer. I mean, that's a huge failure, I thought, personally, to have to go through that and have to put my wife through that. So that helped me re-clarify my goals. Like, do I really want to fucking do this? And there are times where I remember staring at the ceiling like, this is probably the best time I could have right now because I am building something. I am in the shit. This is the worst of the worst. This is going to be the part of the story, one of the chapters that I get to tell later on of staring at this popcorn covered ceiling with a bathroom, and the glass door shower of the bathroom is non existent because the house is just old and fallen apart that we're in. That's a really cool story when I think about it. And then moving on to opening the business, and it was a stem cell business, and we weren't failing at it, but it was going to be a failure at scale because we just, the FDA doesn't like, alternative healthcare and getting people better. So, hey, we got to change to something that's going to be more mainstream and we're going to be able to do for a longer period of time. So we pivoted into Genesis. And then since then, consistently failing as a leader in the company, consistently failing, income wise as our team and and the good thing is that our team always gets paid first. And so same with their bonuses, and Brent and I get paid last, if at all, sometimes, because you're putting it all back into the business. You're not taking home paychecks some month at all. And but we focus on that, and every failure we it just helps us refocus and say, okay, this is what we're doing this for. This is why we're doing this, and et cetera. Is just another chapter in the process of it. So we should have a chapter book filled with just failures because you'd learn a lot. If you took everybody's, let's say, biography or autobiography from, I don't know, the top 50 entrepreneurs in the world right now, top 50 entrepreneurs in history, and they just had a book of all of their fuck ups, those books would be priceless.
Yeah, I feel like you should do that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, yeah. You know what's funny is I had an idea for a podcast with a buddy of mine, Dave Krosky, and Dave is a chill dude, but when we get together, we're kind of like Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets. We're just like two old assholes that like to make fun of everything. It was great. It was wonderful. It was horrible. Like, I hated it, sort of thing. Like, that's what we talk about all the time. It's just bullshit. And we had this idea for a podcast and a book that was literally that. We'd go around and interview past millionaires and billionaires that lost everything, and all we ask is how shitty their lives are and, like, why they fucked up and where they fucked up, and just have a book
Uh,
of, like, the world's greatest fuck ups.
yeah.
We don't know if anybody would ever volunteer for that. But I think it'd be good in the entrepreneur world too to just go and interview a bunch of people and interview them about their biggest fuck up and all the details of it, and write them all down and have just like a book of everybody's biggest fuck up in business. I think it'd be legendary
I do
because
too.
it'd be so much
Yeah.
value there.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one of the projects that we've talked about, and then we were gonna have a podcast on it too, but we figured that'd be a really awkward podcast where we just bring people on and they talk about their fuck ups and we just make fun of them the whole time.
The book,
Uh,
though, I can see.
yeah,
The book,
the
I
book
can
I think
see.
would be better. It would be well received, I think,
Yeah.
versus us just making fun.
Well, I feel like you'd have to have somebody who had the F up and then turned it around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
'Cause
Yeah,
it's somebody who's like, you don't wanna kick kick them while they're down.
yeah, we just kinda wanted to kick them while they're down. That was the original premise of the story,
Yeah.
but I know that's evolved.
Maybe you have it, well, after they've had success again.
Right.
There are people that have had that.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
the roller
Almost
coaster.
everybody does. Everybody does.
Uh, and that's a story worth telling.
Yeah,
Those are failures that are a story worth telling, like what you were sharing, and,
absolutely.
I've definitely had those in my own life as well, and, um, looking at those and going like, "That's later," not when you're in it, but later it's like, "Oh, yeah, I did this thing," and this is what I sacrificed, or this is what I learned. It makes it a good story, and
Yeah,
you wanna tell it.
yeah,
And then it creates inspiration. So, like, oddly enough, failure really does inspire people to do something different.
absolutely it does.
Well, if they're smart.
Yeah, right, and they're just like, "I'm gonna careen off a cliff like a lemming just like that guy did. Fuck it."
Uh,
Um, but n no, you're absolutely right in that, when you guys are going through the shit, when it's the worst time in business and you've been screwed over by a business partner, or if you lost it all, or your business is down and you're not sure if you're gonna survive or pay rent or pay, you know, your salaries, you really need to look at yourself and think, "Hey, what am I still doing this for? Am I still on track to do it?" And if you are, push through it. Have that determination, have that grit, realize that failure is gonna come, and then realize, "Hey, this will be a really cool story one day. This will be awesome." Because, I mean, if you think in that, and if you think in those absolutes where you're always realizing that all your failures, all your shitty parts of business, all the terrible things that you have to go through are just another chapter that's gonna be awesome in your book. I mean, Brent and I talk about all the time. Like, this will be one hell of a funny ass chapter. Like, just of things that we've seen and done, and the fact that nothing really surprises us anymore. It's incredible. Like, to think that, man, this is going to be wild when we actually have this set up, because it's just that chapter is going to be cool. Sort of thing. So realize that you're in the shit of it, and realize that that's gonna be that the protagonist chapter, that they get over that big hurdle and you're cheering them on. The Free Willy jumping over the dam and everybody cheering for that stupid whale. But everybody did it. And you got Michael Jackson in the back singing your praises, and you're just doing it. You're just killing it. So make sure that you realize that your failures are what will define you as you grow. Nobody wants to hear the, "Hey, I grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth, and then I built a business, and it made a bazillion dollars in 3 months, and I never had it to worry about any hard times or anything like that." Nobody likes that type of story. There's no movie that's like the ultra wealthy guy, got ultra wealthy and even more wealthy, and then got all the girls and flew off into the sunset. That's the premise of 0 movies
yeah,
that people love.
boring.
I haven't even seen one. It's always like the guy from rags to riches, fighting the Ivan Drago with, Rocky, or Rudy, playing the last few plays of the Notre Dame football game. I mean, everybody likes the underdog story. Everybody loves the underdog story. Everybody loves the failures, the fuck ups, the pushing through that to create your story. So what are you doing? What are you doing to fail? What are you doing to create that underdog story? And then what are you doing to create that underdog mentality when you wake up every day? Even as you grow in business, even as you're successful, how are you going back to that underdog mentality to get back into that mindset that no matter what, you have to fucking win. There are no options. It is life or death, period.
Yeah. Yeah, it's failure isn't something to fear. Definitely based off this conversation, it's something to embrace, and be really okay with. the creativity that comes with failure and the connection with other people because it does make you more relatable when you have those stories, but it also creates the empathy, like what we were talking about, better leadership skills. There's a lot that can come from it if you have a lens on failure that is a positive one versus thinking that it's negative or the end all of everything because you failed at something. That's something I had to actually work on a lot. I still think I struggle with that a little bit. Um, like perfectionism, like wanting to be perfect and
No,
get it right all
it'll
the
never fucking
time.
happen.
And yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But I still try.
Yeah. Yeah, perfectionism. If you guys are a perfectionist or you tell yourself you're a perfectionist, don't fucking do it. Because I used to the same. Don't fucking do it. You'll never. If you tout yourself as a perfectionist, you're not gonna build a big fucking business. Period. You're just not
Yeah.
because you're gonna be trying to create the perfect everything, and as a result of that, you'll never release anything. You'll never do anything. You'll never get to the next step because you're too worried about making this one step you're doing perfect, and that one step won't move the fucking needle enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gotten better. I've gotten better at it, but also recognizing, like, when I do something that feels like a mistake, like, not taking that as my self-worth,
Mhm.
like, and not holding it, like, personally,
Yeah.
and recognizing, like, it's fine as long as it wasn't done intentionally, and I did my very best, even if I did something that was like, "Oh, I could have done that better."
Yeah.
Um, recognizing, like, it's a part of the process,
Right.
uh, and, it just back to all the things that we said can come from it is a really good stepping stone towards success.
Yep.
So seeing it as that now versus
Absolutely. Like your failures are your stepping stones to success. Like, use them to grow, use them to learn, use them to improve upon yourself, use them to inspire your team and head in a direction that you want to go. And remember, like, failing gloriously is better than never fucking trying. There's always the phrase, or people think, well, what if I do all this work and it goes away? Well, what if you don't do the work? You're going to end up, you're in the same fucking place. What if you don't do any of this? What if you never try? What if you never fail? Like, what if you could what if people to death? And what if kills more dreams than anything on earth? That question kills more dreams than anything. What if, what if, what if? Well, again, what if you don't do it? You're just going to stay in the same place that you are right now. And if you don't want to do that, then fucking do something about it. Go out there and fail gloriously, and keep pushing forward. That's all I have to say about that.